When my wife Claire's mother passed away, I thought the hardest part of our lives had just begun, because we had been her caregivers for nearly 9 months, watching her slip away day by day, and I remember every painful step of that journey, from helping her walk again after chemo weakened her legs, to spoon-feeding her mashed peas at 2 a.m. when nausea stole her appetite, to holding Claire while she sobbed on the kitchen floor the night her mother forgot her name. But even in that sadness I felt proud of how we handled it together, how it made us stronger as a couple, because I thought that kind of shared suffering created unbreakable bonds. I never suspected that while I was running back and forth to the pharmacy, canceling vacations, and sleeping on hospital recliners, Claire had rekindled an old flame behind my back, one she met again by coincidence at a design convention 3 months earlier, or so she claimed. I had believed her when she told me she was going for networking. Had even paid for her hotel suite as a surprise so she could rest in comfort after long days of meetings, never knowing she was using that same room to sleep with a man named Ethan. The same Ethan who had broken her heart in college, the one she had sworn she never wanted to see again, and yet here he was, resurrected like a ghost, pulling her into his arms while I stayed home washing her mother's sheets. I still remember the day Mary, her mom, pulled me aside and looked me in the eye with a weariness I'd only seen in people who had made peace with death. She said, "James, I don't know what Claire's doing, but you're a good man. If she ever makes you question that, remember that I saw you, the real you." And at the time I thought she was just being sentimental, her way of thanking me for stepping up as her health declined. But now I believe she had seen something. Maybe she heard things at night or noticed Claire's phone always lighting up with the same name. And that day of the will reading, the moment I saw Claire walk into the lawyer's office with Ethan beside her, I knew instantly the truth I had buried beneath years of devotion had just erupted into reality. I was sitting there in a charcoal blazer, the one Claire once said made me look dangerously handsome, feeling like the ground had disappeared beneath me because she wasn't holding grief in her eyes. She was glowing radiant even in a way I hadn't seen in months, and she wasn't wearing black either, but a flowing burgundy dress that hugged her like a lover's hand, the same dress I had bought for her 2 Christmases ago. And she had said it was too sexy for family occasions. So imagine the betrayal, the cold slap of realization, when she wore it not for mourning, but for her secret lover standing beside her, bold and smug like he had every right to be there. And maybe he did in her heart, but not in mine, not in that sacred moment of legacy and grief. The lawyer, Mr. Gerald, tried to remain professional, but even he couldn't help raising an eyebrow as Claire introduced Ethan as her support. And while no one spoke openly about the insult of it, I could see the pity in the eyes of the few remaining relatives in the room, the whispers that would no doubt ripple outward like poison in a well. And then came the will reading, and my breath caught when Gerald announced that Mary had left the house, the studio, and over $500,000 in investments, not to Claire, her only daughter, but to me, her son-in-law, with a letter handwritten in shaky penmanship that read, "James, if you're hearing this, I'm likely gone. I've seen enough to know you're the only one who truly stood by me, and by my daughter, even when she didn't deserve it. Please use this to rebuild. I hope you forgive me for putting you through this." And those words hit me harder than any betrayal ever could, because it confirmed everything I had tried to ignore for months. The late-night texts Claire claimed were from her assistant, the way she began locking her phone, the sudden coldness in bed, the passionate fire that once lit our marriage dimming to embers, and the fake smile she gave me each morning like she was acting a part she no longer believed in. I thought about the time I took her to Greece for our 5th anniversary, how she cried at sunset on Santorini and said I made her believe in love again, how we made love under the stars and talked about baby names while sipping wine. And now here she was, clutching Ethan's arm like he was her forever, completely unmoved by the fact her mother had cut her out of everything, and instead of shame she looked angry, entitled, like she had been wronged. And that's when she snapped and accused me in front of everyone of manipulating her mother, of turning her against her own blood. And when I didn't respond, when I just sat there staring at her with all the pain in the world etched on my face, she stormed out, dragging Ethan behind her like a puppet, and I stayed behind with Gerald, numb and hollow, the weight of betrayal cracking me from the inside. Over the next few days everything unraveled. Claire sent me a storm of emails and voicemails, some begging for forgiveness, some laced with venom, claiming I had ruined her life, that I had no right to her mother's legacy. But I said nothing. I let the silence speak louder than my heartbreak, because I knew there was no coming back from what she had done. I moved into Mary's old house, now legally mine, and I found more letters, Notes Mary had written during her final months, some about life, some about regret, and one addressed specifically to me, saying she saw the affair unfold under her roof, that she heard the whispers, saw the late night sneaking in and out, and knew that confronting Claire wouldn't change her, but maybe protecting me from her would mean something in the end. And I cried when I read it, not just for the betrayal, but for the woman who saw me as her own, even when her own daughter didn't. I spent the next year rebuilding, not just my heart but my life, pouring energy into the design studio, renaming it True North, a symbol of clarity and new direction, and it thrived like never before, with clients pouring in and the team Claire once led now reporting to me because after the will reading, her name became toxic in the industry. Word spread that she was cut off, that even her dying mother hadn't trusted her, and when Ethan inevitably left her, as I later learned through a mutual friend who saw him with another woman less than 3 months later, she tried to crawl back into my life, showing up at the house one rainy evening drenched and disheveled, saying she missed the way I looked at her like she mattered, that Ethan never made her feel truly safe, and that she realized too late what she had lost. She even tried to seduce me, stepping closer, letting her coat fall open, revealing the same lingerie I once bought her years ago on Valentine's Day. But I didn't move, I didn't touch her. I just looked at her with a calm so cold it burned, and I said, "You had everything, Claire, and you gave it away for a man who didn't even love you through your grief. Now you get to love yourself through your loneliness." And I closed the door in her face, not out of cruelty but out of mercy, for myself, for the man I used to be, the one who would have forgiven her too quickly, and in that moment I finally felt free, not just from her, but from the illusion that love without loyalty meant anything at all. Months passed and I fell in love again, not fast, not recklessly, but slowly, with someone who had been in my life in the background for years, my friend Natalie, who had been Mary's nurse and often stayed late to talk with me about grief, purpose, and dreams, and over time friendship bloomed into something real, something I didn't trust at first, but eventually embraced. And one night, as we lay in bed watching the stars through the skylight Mary had always adored, Natalie said, "You know, Mary once told me you were her greatest blessing." And I smiled, kissed her hand, and thought to myself that sometimes the universe breaks us so we can rebuild into someone even better. I wasn't the man I used to be, but I was finally whole, not because of what I had lost, but because of what I chose to never accept again.